haven't said different things. Our feeling of if I'm relieved and he's more upset, that's a subjective question. The key question is, on reading the report, did we see different things? I don't think so.
Our leader is there to protect Canadians and our institutions and democracy.
I think this is riding specific, but it comes down to the political parties doing a better job policing their nomination. So I have no issue with it in my riding.
What you really need is a good sort of general sensitivity as to how things happen out there, and you use your own spidey senses and use your own judgment, to decide where you go and who you sit down with.
If you happen to be confused about allegations of foreign agents in the House of Commons last week, you probably still are. For a little bit of a refresher, first, NSICOP, a committee of parliamentarians with top-secret security clearance, released a report alleging there is intelligence showing some of their colleagues had wittingly or semi-wittingly or unwittingly aided foreign states. But most details were redacted from public view. So two party leaders got clearance to read the full report, Elizabeth May with the Green Party and Jagmeet Singh with the NDP. But they came out of that reading with two very different interpretations, with May saying she's relieved and Singh more concerned than ever before. While that was all going down, the House of Commons voted to express support for the National Inquiry into Foreign Interference examining the allegations, something the Commissioner, Justice Ogg, agreed to somewhat today, releasing a statement that reads in part, "The Commission takes note of the government's decision to resort to the process of an independent commission of inquiry to shed light on the facts and events discussed in the NSICOP report." The statement goes on to say the Commission will conduct this examination as part of its ongoing work. So that means essentially that the mandate won't change. They didn't ask for an expansion or a different mandate. They didn't ask the government of that. Here to unpack what all of that means and clear some things up for us are two reporters who have led on this file, the Globe and Mail's Ottawa Bureau Chief, Robert Fife, and Senior Parliamentary Reporter, Steven Chase. Hello to both of you. Good to see you. Let's start off with Elizabeth May, Bob, and Jagmeet Singh, who are both kind of trying to further clarify their positions. They don't want to engage in a debate with each other, but I think Canadians were left at the end of last week and into this week thinking, how do I reconcile two people seeing the exact same thing and walking away, one relieved, one the opposite?
Well, look, it's very confusing for everybody. The commission's or the NSICOP report was, as you said, a bombshell and explosive, and nobody has denied that there were MPs who may be witting or wittingly being involved in this. It's one of degree. Miss May says it's not, doesn't seem to her as serious. They were stupid. They got involved with something they should have asked more questions about. Whereas Mr. Singh is saying, "Oh no, this is pretty serious. Some of this stuff borders on treason." I'm leaning towards what Mr. Singh is doing rather than what Ms. May has said. But the problem we have, Vassy, is we may never know. Because even though the Hogue inquiry is now going to look at this, the government and the opposition parties passed it to the inquiry. If you read what the commission said today, which is, yes, we're going to look at that. We have all the documents. We're going to be able to see everything. But because of due process and fairness, which are pretty principal parts of our legal system, I don't think we're going to find out those names.
Well, the other part of this is, and I sort of mentioned off the top there, Steve, like the mandate doesn't actually change. The government had said, Minister LeBlanc had said a few weeks ago, if she requests a change to her mandate to include this, like we will grant that. But she didn't. And the mandate going forward is to look at how the system works and make recommendations. It's not to say, here are the parliamentarians who you should be worried about and here are their names.
Although I think that something that people are missing from the phase 2 of the hearings is that it's also free to look at any examples of foreign interference as part of that second phase. In the first phase of the hearings, which generated a report in May, it was really constrained to the 5 weeks before the 2019 election and the 2021 election. Now, the fences are off, the leashes are off, and Justice Hogg can look at anything she wants to. So it's really,
so
it makes sense.
So did you interpret today's statement as, I'm going to take a closer look at this?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And there will be other things I'm pretty sure they'll be looking at in the second phase, including China's targeting of Michael Chong, which didn't fit into their first phase mandate.
And do you expect, I mean, Bob, you talked a little bit about toning down expectations for what, because she also referenced in that statement that she has available to her all the same intelligence as NSICOP. Ultimately, NSICOP looked at all this stuff. They came to the conclusions they did, and what they're able to share we have all consumed at this point. Do you think that Justice Oak will be able to go beyond that?
No, I don't think she's going to be able to go beyond that, because she herself has said that she is bound by a due process, and she can't put people's names out, because this is not hard evidence. Mm-hmm. This is intelligence that shows that some of these MPs are meeting with foreign intelligence officers, for example, but it doesn't meet the test of a court of law or at this stage where charges would be laid. So I think that's the difficulty we have in finding out this information. Now, that's not to say that the Prime Minister cannot reveal those names. He can. He's in charge of the government. He's not bound by the same type of secrecy things. He could release the names if he chose to do so. I don't think he wants to do so. And, you know, I'm really torn by this, because I also believe that you have to be careful that we don't bandy people's names about. Unless we have pretty strong evidence that they've been involved. Certainly looks in the case of the former member of parliament who was meeting with foreign intelligence officers that that's probably something that could pass the smell test and be publicly revealed. But some of the other stuff, I think we have to be extremely careful that we don't ruin people's reputations.
Yeah, I feel like there's got to be some middle ground. You know, Steve, it's not just say nothing or tell everybody, you know, release the names publicly without any due process. And I think that the nexus of that happened over the weekend when you've got a lot of questions to both the Conservatives but also the Prime Minister. Hey, is there anybody in the Liberal Party? Are there members of your caucus that you feel uncomfortable with, that you think are part of this in any way? Melanie Joly sat across from me here late last week and said, no, there are no traitors. But the Prime Minister over the weekend, when he was traveling, he got asked that by reporters, and he didn't provide a clear answer. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges, and we have some experience in reading classified documents, is that they often say everything but the name. And that information is held in a different database. So it may be that Justice Ugg will need CSIS to help her interpret this evidence. It may say an MP or a candidate, but it may leave out the name, which is often at least our experience with these documents.
But, you know, there is a solution to this. Even if they don't have to release the names, if they believe that some of these people are compromised,
that's what I
don't
mean.
let them run.
Yeah, don't let them run or kick them out of caucus. And that's what he was, you know, the Prime Minister's
Right.
on the receiving end of. The leader of the Conservatives has been on the receiving end of. And nobody really seems to articulate a specific plan to get to.
Because the parties don't want to do this.
There you go.
That's the big problem.
That's the impression I think Canadians are left with.
And they're all stuck. They're all in the same boat. None of them we've got to clean up our nomination process. You know, for example, the Liberals, you don't have to be a Canadian, for heaven's sakes, to be able to vote in these nominations. We need to clean all this stuff up, but none of the parties want to do that. And I hope and I expect that Justice Hogue is going to make that recommendation. But if these parties drag their feet...
But that also was one of the recommendations in the NCCOP report, and it's been overshadowed by this. The NCCOP report said we need to take nomination races and leadership contests and place them firmly under the Elections Act, under Elections Canada. We talked to all four major parties last week. None of them would agree to that.
And what is your sense about the hesitation there?
Because there's shenanigans that go on in these leadership races, and they want the license to allow these shenanigans to continue because it serves them. They cut off membership sales at a certain point. They can change dates arbitrarily. In other countries, like Australia, you can't vote in a nomination race if you haven't been a member for X number of months or whatever. So I think they like the margin of maneuver to interfere in these races when it benefits them.
So, Bob, what's the impetus for pressure on any of the parties if they're all in the same? But I think they had all sort of thought that moving this to the arena of the inquiry would alleviate the political pressure, because this isn't a situation in which the opposition is all over the government like it had been earlier on foreign interference when you both began reporting. Like, they all seem to want to push this away a little bit.
Look, I think we'll have to need a very strong statement from Justice Hogue on this issue. And then I think you and me and other journalists have to keep on their case, and Canadians have to keep on their case. But otherwise, we're still going to have a lot of foreign interference, and it always takes place in the nomination process, because many cases, if you're from Alberta and you win a Tory nomination, you're in forever. And the same thing in certain Liberal ridings in Atlantic Canada or in downtown Toronto, for example, although maybe not in St. Paul's anymore. So that is, to me, that's one of the cruxes they've done a lot in terms of the legislation that is now going through the Senate, and bravo to them. They had to be forced to do this, the government. But this one big area needs to be really rectified.
Okay, I got to leave it there. Thank you both very much. I appreciate it. Bob Fife and Steve Chase with the Globe and Mail. We're going to talk about the political stakes of this issue a little bit later on this evening.